There we go. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Alyssa Scarciati. I'm the client education specialist here at Lexer Dental Laboratory Group. We appreciate you spending what hopefully is your lunch hour with us today. Today we're going to be covering mastering intraoral scanning for implant restorations. And we are partnered with 3Shape for this, with Trios. Just a couple little housekeeping items. Any questions that you have, please put in the Q&A section. The chat is going to be disabled, but we definitely would love for this to be interactive. So please share any questions that you have in the Q&A. And then your credits will be sent out. You all are receiving 1 CE credit for this. So that will be sent out to you within 2 weeks post-course. Just a little bit about Lexer Dental Laboratory Group and who we are. We are a network of multiple laboratories, based all the way up in Rhode Island and then all the way over to Texas as well. We're a network of labs. We all work together. Each lab sort of has their own specialty of what they focus on. If you want to work with someone that's local, that's fine as well, but we have certainly lots of options within network. And then I wanted to introduce our 2 intraoral scanning experts here at the lab. So we have Emily Geisey. She's the Associate Director of Digital Adoption and Integration. And then we have Tori, who's the Director of Digital Adoption and Integration. If you guys want to say a quick hello.
Yes, thank you, Alyssa. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for being here with us today. I'm excited to be partnering with Brandy and getting some more knowledge on the 3Shape and Trio scanner with Implants. We're here to help. We'll be here throughout the duration of the webinar. And so if anybody has questions, we'll be popping in to help answer those questions. But excited to have everyone again and come back from where we'll be doing more series on scanning with 3Shape. So hope to see you there.
And then I wanted to introduce our Trios expert for today. So we have Brandy Smith. Brandy is excellent, very knowledgeable. This was our second course with her and we got excellent feedback on the first one. So as Tori mentioned, this will be a series. So excited to hand it over to Brandy, who will be going over implant scanning with you guys today.
Thank you, guys. So thanks so much for joining us today. So let me go ahead and share my screen. It takes just a moment, so thanks. So I appreciate all y'all being here. So let me just minimize my little Zoom bar to get all of those off of my screen. And I just want to verify, can everybody, my Zoom bars are out of the way. Is that correct?
Yep. You have a little one on the bottom. Oh yeah, that looks better. Yep.
Okay, good. Okay, good. Sometimes it takes a minute to
catch
up. So yeah. So thanks guys for joining. I know last time we went over Crown and Bridge. I'm not sure if everyone was there, but I am going to hit some highlights of some of the things that we went over last time. Today we're going to start by creating a new patient just so we can kind of start from scratch. So to create a new patient, I like to first search for a patient because we don't want to put the patient in twice because we probably have someone that is super efficient in our office that has already put the patient in. So I do like to search for our patient first. So for that, I'm going to type in my patient, Peter Parker. And then I know I have this big blue bar down here that says new patient, but if I search for my patient first, if you'll notice it says I have no patients found, do I want to add Peter Parker, which is a hyperlink. So if I select that hyperlink, it's going to input the first and last name that I already selected. Now, the only required field in this particular box is going to be the last name. However, we know that we see multiple people with the same last name. So I want to make sure that you have the correct person in there. So I usually say just put in the first and last name and also the date of birth. What if we have Peter Parker Jr. and Peter Parker Sr.? We want to make sure that we can coordinate or distinguish between the two. So I am going to go ahead and just put in a date of birth for Peter Parker. I can also add an email in here to send the case to Peter Parker if he wants to. Now, by sending the case to Peter Parker, that doesn't mean that the patient can send the case to another lab or alter the scan at all. All it is just for them to be able to view that scan, just so they can say, hey, this is cool, and they can show people if they want to. Additionally, there are some notes down here that you can add, and those are going to be patient-specific notes, not notes that are going to be sent to the lab. I'll show you in just a moment where to put those notes for the lab. So once we put in our new patient information, I can select add down at the bottom. And then it's going to take me to this giant page that says, what are you doing today? Today we're going to do a scan and send, which is going to be just selecting our lab. I'm going to select my dummy lab that comes to me. I do not produce any products from my dummy lab here. I just get the scans. So I'm going to go ahead and select my dummy lab from Cookie Lab, and then that's going to open the case. When I open the case, it's going to take us to our case details page. So the case details page is basically what we're setting up our prescription to send to the lab. So I do like to start on the left-hand side of the page first before I move over to the right-hand side of the page, just to make sure that I have all of my details in there and I'm not missing anything before I send the case off. So we are going to set up for an implant today. So first off, I like to make sure I have the correct lab, and then I will choose my delivery date. Now in our software, if you do not choose the delivery date initially, it will not let you send the case off to the lab at the back end of it before you select a delivery date. So there is an option at the back end before we send it off to select a delivery date if you choose not to do it in the beginning. But for now, I'm going to go ahead and set our delivery date, and I'm going to think that our lab is super efficient and is going to get my implant case back to me in a week, which I think is awesome. And then I'm going to go ahead and move forward and actually set up the case. So for an implant scanning, we do have a scan only option, but we don't recommend doing the scan only option for particular workflows such as crown bridge implants, things of that nature. So I am going to set it up as an implant, and we're going to scan our scan body today. So for this, I'm going to select single units. And there are two different options for our implant workflow for this workflow, and I'm gonna set both of them up for you in one case. We'll just delete one of them so you can see what they look like. So the first one I'll set up is the implant abutment. Now our implant abutment and our screw retain crown workflow, the workflows are the same. It's just the setup that's a little different, just to distinguish what we're sending to the lab. So the first one I'm going to set up for the implant abutment, and I will set up for tooth number 14. When I select tooth number 14, you'll notice that it kind of grays it out. It has like a little purple like outline around it. So that just indicates that we are setting up for tooth number 14. Over on the left-hand side of the screen, I do have other options that I need to select for my implant abutment. So I do need to select the implant connection. So my implant connection has a couple different options that I need to set up. So number one, it's going to be the manufacturer. How our system works, it will default to the manufacturer that I used last, which is Straumann. If I needed to choose another manufacturer from the list other than Straumann, I will just select manufacturer, and then the list of manufacturers should pop up for me to be able to choose from another manufacturer there. So I'm just going to go back and just select Straumann on this particular one. And then from there, I just always like to make sure, we get a lot of questions about this, is I like to make sure that you choose the other different systems that we need for the manufacturer. So first we'll choose the manufacturer. Second, we'll choose the system, whatever system we need for that particular implant. And then we will choose the implant connection. So dependent on the manufacturer, will be how many steps that you need to choose past the manufacturer. So sometimes it may be A and B, sometimes it may be A, B, and C. I just want to make sure that you indicate all of those green check marks before you can move on. If you'll notice, I can't choose the material of our implant abutment now because I haven't chosen all of A, B, and C for our manufacturer. Okay, so I just want to make sure that you guys see that, because that is a question I get often when they need to set this up and they can't move forward. So I'm going to go ahead and choose my implant connection. Now it's going to ask me what material I want to set up for my actual custom abutment. So I can select that material. Now I can select the material for my crown. And as you notice, as I'm going down and selecting these materials, it's giving me those green check marks, goodness gracious, I'm trying to blur all my words together. It will give me those green check marks to indicate that I have chosen all of those things and allow me to move on to the next step. So I will go ahead and choose my material for my crown, and then I'll choose my shade. So I'll go ahead and choose my shade for that. Now I have all of my green check marks, which makes me very happy, and I can choose save on the left-hand side of the screen, and now I can see that I have my indication for crown number 14. So I'm not going to scan for crown number 14 today. I'm actually going to scan for tooth number 19, but I wanted to show you how to set that up. And while we set up for tooth number 19, I'll show you the steps for the screw retain crown, and then we'll get into the scanning part. So I'm going to go ahead and select single units, and I'll select the screw retain crown at this point. And now I'm going to choose tooth number 19 to be my implant for that. So you'll notice it is a little different, and that's just indicating that it's actually going to be screw retained. So it has that little screw hole in the center. So you'll be able to see that that's the difference between the actual custom abutment crown that we just indicated for 14, and then now the screw retained crown on number 19. So now I'll go back over to the implant connection, and then again, it's going to default to the manufacturer I had before. So Straumann will have the system, and now we'll choose the implant connection. And then this part is actually asking for the whole screw retain crown material. So I'll choose that material. And then again, choose the shade, and I have all of my green check marks that I can now save. So typically I do both of these and set both of these up at the same time during a training, even though I'm only scanning one. So that way you can see how to set up for multiple single unit implants. But now I'm going to just delete tooth number 14 off of our case overview. So that way we are only scanning for tooth number 19. So I'm just going to delete that. So instead of deleting all or starting the case over, all I need to do is select tooth number 14, and I'll have a trash can that appears in the center, and I'm just going to hit that trash can so it takes 14 away. Now, in our software, when you select for an implant, it should default over on the right-hand side to add an emergence profile into the workflow. So our workflows are typically lower arch scan, upper arch scan, both right and left bites. With an implant workflow, it should default to that emergence profile. I will say that our newer version doesn't automatically, it's a little bug that they're working on, doesn't automatically select that. So just make sure it is selected. It is a very important step to scan for your implants. I will tell you, labs more than likely want you to scan that emergence profile. So I do encourage you to add that emergence profile into your scan, and we're going to go through that workflow here in just a moment. And again, if you guys have any questions, please don't hesitate to put it in the Q&A, and we'll answer those questions as we go along. So for now, I'm going to go ahead and select next in the upper right-hand corner to get into our actual scan workflow. So the scan strategy for a lower arch, for a lower arch scan is going to be occlusal. We're going to rock onto that anterior and then come around onto the lingual and then scan that buccal surface. The reason we rock on that anterior surface is because the incisal edge will not stitch together properly. It'll probably have like a black line around that incisal edge if you don't rock back and forth to capture a little bit of the lingual and a little bit of the buccal surface as you're going along onto that. And I'll show you what that looks like in my camera. So for this purpose, there are two scan strategies that we can, or two scan paths that we can do for an implant. The first one I'm going to show you is the lock surface method. With the lock surface method, it's going to go in line in succession of the scans itself. So we are imagining on my beautiful typodont that this is a healing abutment. Now, for this particular lock surface, how it's going to work is your patient's going to be in, you're going to remove that healing abutment, and very quickly, within 3 to 5 seconds, I should have turned my scanner on so I didn't have to wait for it because it's longer than 3 to 5 seconds. So we're going to take off that healing abutment. Within that 3 to 5 seconds, we're going to immediately just scan in that emergence profile. Nothing more, just the emergence profile. I'm going to stop. I'm not going to scan the full arch. I'm going to go over to my left-hand side to my lock surface feature. The lock surface feature is literally just like it says. I can turn on that lock surface feature, and I can literally lock or paint somewhere on my scan and lock in that surface. When I'm locking in that surface, all that means is I'm not going to overscan that area. So basically, I'm going to take off my healing abutment. I want to scan in that emergence profile and lock that surface so that way I'm not capturing that tissue collapsing again when I go to scan in the full arch. So I'm going to go ahead and use my lock surface feature. When I turn that on, I do have a couple different diameters that I can choose for that lock surface. And I'm just going to keep it on 2 millimeters, and I'm just going to paint it on. Don't judge my drawing skills because it's not very good. I even have a mouse too to even kind of help with that, and then sometimes it doesn't. So I'm just going to lock that in. And then once I use that lock surface, it does turn blue. When I select done at the bottom, it will turn white. So you'll notice that it is actually locked. So now that I have locked in that surface, my healing abutment is still out of the mouth. Now I can go ahead and scan in the rest of the arch. So I'm going to go ahead and scan that arch. I'm going to rock onto that anterior, come around onto that lingual surface, and then I'm going to come around onto the buccal. When I get to that buccal surface, I may take my wand out when I get to that midline and just rearrange my hand and then go back and scan that area back in. Okay. So now I have taken my healing abutment off. I have locked in that emergence profile. I have scanned in the full arch. Now I need to mark the tooth. So if I go in here, I'm going to put my little circle on the center of that emergence profile. And then it does put a big circle on it. That's because when we scan for that emergence profile, remember it adds in that additional scan. So now once I select done at the bottom to mark that tooth, it's going to cut out that emergence profile for my next scan, which is going to be my scan body scan. So once that prepares, I'll show you what that looks like. So my scan body is a training scan body. So it will look a little different than the scan bodies that you have in your office. And then placement of that scan body, typically if there's a little flat surface, I don't know if you can see on mine, it may be blurry, but there is a little flat surface you'll be able to see on my scan. Usually the flat surface wants to be towards the buccal. Your lab wants you to have it towards the buccal surface. Or if there's numbers written on your scan body, typically those numbers are going to be facing the buccal surface. So that way the lab can easily read it. So now all I have to do on this scan body scan is just scan in the scan body. I already have my full arch scan. So now I'm just going to go through and just start scanning my scan body. You'll be able to see that flat surface of that scan body once I get this scanned in. And I do try to kind of stick to my scan strategy when I'm scanning the scan body, but sometimes I just kind of work around until it just captures all of that information. So I do want to talk a little bit about some of the other tools that we have over there, which we had gone over with our Crown and Bridge if you were at the Crown and Bridge, but I want to talk about why we would need it. So with this scan body, you can see on my scan body, I have some areas that are missing. So the green areas are missing data in my scan, but the green areas are less than 3 millimeters of scan data that is missing. So that means when we post-process the case in a little bit, AI is going to fill those areas in. So I may not be concerned about areas over here interproximally that AI can fill in later because it's not going to affect my restoration, but I may not want AI to fill in the areas that's going to be surrounding my scan body. Maybe I want to go back in and scan those areas in. So if I want to do so, I can go back in and scan just regularly, or I can use some of the tools that I have over on the left-hand side. So over on the left-hand side, I do have my trim tool. The trim tool is just something that we can trim up and make our scan look pretty. So I can open the trim tool, and I have a couple different diameters that I can choose from. I do like to keep it on the brush stroke because my brush stroke is literally just going to be where my mouse is. The laser is going to cut through and through. So if I trim on my buccal surface, it's going to go all the way through my scan to the lingual surface. And honestly, the only time I ever use that is when I train. I don't think I ever have offices that use the laser part. So, but I want you to see the differences or at least know the differences so you can make sure you're on the right one. So when you open up your trim, make sure you're on the brush. You can change your diameter of your trim tool. So I'm just going to go ahead and just trim this up just to make it a little pretty. And then if you notice, I have this little piece that's kind of hanging out. I can go ahead and just finish trimming that out. That way it's just removed and I don't have to worry about all that. So that is what the trim tool does. But I want to show you what the zoom tool does to be able to gather more information on a scan. So before I show you the zoom, I do want to talk a little bit about image count. So over on the right-hand side of the screen, you can notice my image count is 699. Now, in our software, in the Unite software, you are allowed to gather up to 2,500 images on a single arch scan if it's a full arch. So I have much more images that I can gather on this particular scan. Now, I don't want you to overscan. I don't want you to keep going back over the same area over and over and over again. I have offices that have done that before with implants, just because they've been struggling to gather that information. And I want to show you what you can do to help with that so you're not overscanning. But if you're taking a full arch scan, just know that you can go up to 2,500 images. If you scan a quadrant scan, which is perfectly fine, you do not have to scan a full arch scan, then make sure that your image count is 1,250 and below. Okay. Now, I say that because not only is it important for every scan that you do, but it's also important for this next tool that I want to show you, which is the zoom tool. So the zoom tool, I love the zoom tool when I'm trying to get difficult areas, whether it's my contact areas, whether it's areas on my scan body, whatever I need to zoom in and gather. I love that tool. So a couple things I want to talk about the zoom tool is the zoom tool is going to up your image count dramatically when you turn it on, because what it's doing is zooming in and hyper focusing on an area, and it gathers more resolution. So it's going to make our image count go up dramatically. So that's why I don't like using it on a quadrant scan or a full arch scan, really only in areas that are going to be pertinent to our restoration. It also is going to change our pretty scan here to a stone version, because the stone version, you're going to be able to see a lot more details than you are going to see in this. And I will tell you that a lot of labs tell me that they would rather you look at it in the stone version before you send your case off, because that's what the labs are going to see. They're going to see that stone version in the STL files that they gather. And then additionally, when you go to scan the zoom, I typically scan pretty quickly when I'm scanning, but when you scan with the zoom, you do want to hover slightly. So you don't want to make quick movements with the zoom tool, just so it can gather that information. So I do want to use it so you can see what it looks like. So I'm going to turn zoom on. And then you'll notice it's selected. It has like this little white box there. So now I'm going to go in and just directly in the area that I need to gather more information, I'm going to turn that on. But I do want you to pay attention to number one, how it changes my scan from the stone version, but also pay attention to that image count as well. And then see how it's just gathering that information. Now, sometimes it wants to make me a liar and not gather the information on my scan body because it's a training scan body. So just know that you're not going to have this issue because you have a real scan body instead of a training one that I have. And then obviously wherever we lock the surface is not going to scan in anymore. So it does gather that more information. I know it's making me a liar at the moment because of my scan body. So it does gather more information, I promise. So you do notice that it has made my image count go up tremendously in that little bit of time that I did scan. So use that zoom function, use your lock surface feature if you need to. I do have some offices that will, if they only have maybe like one scan body and they have like 3 sites, they will scan in one scan body, lock the entire surface of that scan body, move the scan body over, scan that scan body, lock that entire surface, move that scan body to the 3rd site, and that way you're not over scanning each site that you've already done and you're only utilizing one scan body. Okay. I hope that makes sense. Again, if you have questions, put it in the Q&A. And one other thing that I want to talk about before I move on is going to be turning AI off. So if you need to gather more information with AI. So with AI, what happens in our software, AI is clipping out things that it thinks that we do not need, like tongues, lips, cheeks, fingers, gloves, things of that nature while we're scanning. However, sometimes you may need to gather more tissue. So if you have a surgical site that you're placing maybe comfort caps or anything of that nature with your implants, and it's clipping out some of that tissue, you can go in here and turn AI off and gather more information. And by doing so, you're just going to go to the toolbox, so that little screwdriver and wrench, and then you can turn AI off right there to be able to gather more information to get more of that tissue. Now, the Downside to that would be that you may have to trim up a little bit more just because it may gather your finger or lips and cheeks and things of that nature. So just know that if you do turn AI off, you may just have to do a little bit of trimming on the back end of it. Okay. So that was our lock surface. So I'm going to go ahead and move forward to the next scan, which is going to be our upper arch. So at this point, you could take off your scan body, place your healing abutment back in place, and then move forward with the rest of your scan. So I'm going to go ahead and scan the upper arch, which is going to be occlusal. We're going to rock onto that anterior. We're going to scan the buccal surface, and then lastly, the lingual surface, just in case we need to scan that palate. It's just a little swooping motion. So I'm going to go ahead and scan that upper arch. Hopefully everybody's still awake. I was feeling like before we got started that I needed some coffee, but I'm good now. So good thing I'm still awake, right?
We're here, Brandy. You're not
I'm
just
so glad.
a vacuum. I know sometimes you feel like you're just, yeah.
Talking to myself. It's okay. I talk to myself a lot anyway, so it's fine.
We have a great audience.
Yeah.
Awesome. So I am just scanning that palette, and you see I just scan that in a swooping motion. You do not necessarily need to scan the palette. I just like to show it when I'm scanning just in case you need to. There is typically one other thing that I like to talk about when scanning the palette is typically people will scan, when they go to scan the palette, they'll keep the scanner parallel to the teeth. And what happens is when you get to the palate, it's going to be too far away. I know you can't see it, but it's going to be too far away. So I do like to show that I tip in towards the palate, especially if they have a deep palate. You want to tip in towards that, because if the scanner's that far away where the teeth are, then it's just going to have trouble picking up that palate. So that's a little tip that I like to show. So I'm going to move forward now. So we have taken all of our scans for our scan body and all of those things. So now I'm going to go ahead and just take our bite scan. So the bite scan, we're going to scan the right side first. So bite 1 in a full arch scan is always going to be on the right side. Bite 2 is always going to be on the left side. Obviously, if you take a quadrant scan and the quadrant's on the left side, we don't need the right side. So bite 1 can be on the left side if it's only a quadrant scan. So I'm going to go ahead and just scan that right side quadrant. And then I do like a little rectangle scan. I will say that if you do like a sweeping motion, some scanners want you to do a sweeping motion for your bite. What I will say is with our software and scanner, if you do that sweeping motion, I have found that it may throw you into manual alignment and it may not do an auto align, just because it's almost like too fast of a movement for the bite. So if that happens, just clear your bite and then just do that rectangle, and I promise it'll connect a whole lot quicker. Now, some other reasons why your auto align may not work is if they just have a wonky bite. If I mean, just to be honest, if it's really wonky, then the software is like, I don't know what to do with these teeth. Then you may have to manually align. If they have a large edentulous, partial edentulous area, that may throw you into manual alignment as well, just because if it's a large edentulous area, the software just may not recognize where those teeth need to go. And that's okay. I can show you how to manually align in just a moment. So I'm going to go ahead and scan on the left side and just do my little rectangle. It does make a little noise. Somebody told me the other day it sounded like a casino when it connects. So it does make a noise when it connects. I do watch the screen too, because sometimes it'll connect before I'm done gathering more of the posterior bite when I'm scanning. So I do like to make sure that I gather all of that information in the posterior so the lab has all of that information. I'm an overachiever when it comes to sending things to the lab. I like to send over things and then maybe they don't want, but I like to make sure I have everything that I need to send to the lab. So I do want to talk about manual alignment. So if it throws you into that manual alignment, I just want to show you how to do so. It will already take you to this screen prior to that, so you shouldn't have to hit manual alignment unless you feel like it's off. But basically, it's just the full arch scan on the left-hand side of the screen and the quadrant bite scan on the right-hand side of the screen, and you're just going to orient the two scans and then place a dot on the exact same spot on the full arch scan along with the bite scan. So I'll show you how to do so. You can find a pinpoint of an area. You can place the dot either on tissue or teeth. It does not matter, as long as the dot is in the same exact spot. So I'll just show you here in this papilla, and then I'll do the same exact dot on this papilla, and then you should see it snap into place. I say that, and then it's off. That means I didn't put it in the right spot. There we go. So now that was the lower and right bite. So now I need to continue to each arch. So I'm going to do so for every quadrant. Obviously, if you only have a quadrant scan, then you'll only have to do this for 2 sides instead of just the 4 quadrants like you normally would. So I'm going to go ahead and orient those and then place my corresponding dots, and then it just snaps into place. And then I will do my last one, and then we will talk about our motion scan, and then I'll show you the last workflow. Beautiful. So now once I'm done with the manual alignment, all I'll do is accept manual alignment, and it takes me back to the occlusion page. So the last thing that I want to show you on here is the motion scan, which is 3Shape's occlusion scan. This scan that's on the screen is called a static bite. The motion scan is literally just a scan that we're going to take of the patient moving side to side, front to back. It literally takes a little video. I love it. I think it's awesome because we can show the lab what the patient's excursions look like. It is different than scanning in the sense that you need to keep a slight distance from the teeth while you're scanning. You also need to keep the scanner still while you're asking your patient to move side to side, front to back. And then also you need to keep your scanner in the 50-50 occlusal plane. So once we get to that point, you'll see that you can take your motion scan on the right side. You can take it on either side, but you can't take it on both sides. Maybe one day they will let us to take it on both sides. But for now, we're only going to do one side. So I'm going to go ahead and start on the right-hand side. It does start out kind of with my bite, my blue, I say blue bite, like blue bite first. And when I turn my scanner on, when I'm recording the bite, it should turn green. If it turns red, that means I'm not capturing anything. That means either I'm moving my wand or I'm too far or too close to the teeth. So ideally, you want to scan about 20 seconds of this. Now, it doesn't have a counter. You count for 20 seconds. It's hard for me to do this for 20 seconds with my Typodont, but I just want to record a little bit of it so you can see what it looks like. And it does process, so it does take a few moments for it to do so. And then once it processes, then I can look at my excursions. I can see how that patient's moving, and then I can also open the view. So if I open the view, then I can actually see through that process of that recording, I can see where they're hitting too hard. And then maybe I want to talk to the lab about maybe making those adjustments, or maybe it could lead me into another workflow like a night guard or something of that nature. So I love this feature. I think it's awesome. I think it's a wonderful thing that 3Shape has added into our workflow. So I won't show you all this for the next one because we won't need to go through all those tools, but I do want to make sure that you see these and have any questions answered for those before we move on. So that workflow for the implant, I'm going to go ahead and move to the next section. That was the lock surface workflow. I will show you the next surface or the next workflow here in just a moment, but I do want to show you that I have not post-processed the case yet. We can see that our case is a little rough around the edges. It still has those green areas, and remember those green areas are missing data, but it's less than 3 millimeters. So once we post-process the case, those areas are going to be filled in from AI, okay? So I can go ahead and post-process the case, which does take a few moments for it to process, which is a great time for anyone to ask questions if you have any, because it does take a few moments. Sometimes I'll hum the Jeopardy song. I'm not going to bore you with those right now, though. I should have the Jeopardy song queued up, though. That would be wonderful.
That's a good idea.
I know. I should do that. I say that every training. Usually I just like continue talking about random stuff, but I don't want to bore people. So it does take a few moments for it to process that data. This workflow that I just showed you, the lock surface workflow, is really dependent on how you want your workflow to go. My clinical brain, I have a lot of years of clinical experience under my belt as an assistant. For me, in my state where I practice, I could not take off the healing abutment. So for me, this next workflow worked better for me because I'm taking all of my scans with the scan body in, and then the last thing I'm doing is, with the healing abutment in, and then the last thing I'm doing is taking off the healing abutment, emergence profile, scan body, and that's the last thing that I do. So it might make more sense. It really just depends on what makes more sense for your practice and what your assistants can do in your office. Okay. So this was the lock surface, feature, the lock surface workflow. Now we have post-processed the case. So now we can see that all of my green areas are now filled in and everything looks beautiful on that. So now what I would do is select next in the upper left-hand corner. And then everything looks beautiful. I could add any case instructions from here that I need to tell the lab whatever I needed to do on this particular one. I could attach any images that I needed to. Obviously, I have nothing in my patient library. The patient library is in Trios Unite software. Any scans or any photos that I've done on this particular patient would be in this library, but because Peter Parker's new, there's nothing in there. So that's why there's nothing to add from there. I can send to the patient. So in the beginning, when we created our new patient, I could add in an email address for Peter Parker. That's going to be in the system always if I wanted to send it to him. If I didn't add it into his new patient note that I did, I could just add it in per case and then send it to the patient. I could also require a PIN in case, Aunt May's super nosy and gets into his email. You can create a 4-digit PIN with him chairside to access that. Now, again, can't send it anywhere else, and he can't alter it. He can only view it. And then the last thing is I can view the print version. I do like this view print version in the sense that I can print this off into a PDF. Maybe I wanted to print this into and put it into my practice management software, or maybe my front office wants to print this form to send to their insurance company to have as a copy in there as well. So it has all of the details for our case, and then it also has the images that we took as well. So that is that. So I can go ahead and send it to my lab. And then we can get into our next workflow. Any questions about that? Anybody gonna ask any questions? Everybody good?
Hi, we do actually have a couple of questions, Brandy.
Okay.
Oh, it looks like Tori is responding, but I'll let you. One is, if I'm doing an implant bridge, is there a tool in 3Shape that will allow me to see if the implants are roughly parallel?
So not necessarily in this particular workflow. There is an implant studio that's an additional, called a studio app that you'll be able to see if it's parallel that way. And that is an additional training that you have to purchase the studio app. Now I do know that there's some sort of, I'm not a salesperson, but I do know that there's some kind of promotion on our studio apps now. I don't know what that is, but if you want to contact your reseller, then you can ask about those, and then they can give you, I think there's like a demo that you can view to be able to see on the studio app to see if it's parallel.
That's pretty cool. Thank you.
It is pretty cool. Okay, so that was one workflow. So let's go back to the home button. So the home button in our software is going to take us back to Peter Parker's home screen, not our actual home screen of all of our list of patients. I am going to go ahead and start a new case. And with this new case, I'm going to go ahead and select my dummy lab, cookie lab again, so we can do our second workflow. And once that opens, I will go ahead and set up the same case. So I'm going to choose my delivery date for next week. And then I will select single unit. And I'm going to set this up as a screw retain crown for tooth number 19. So again, the workflows are the same. Choose my implant connection, Strawman. The system's going to be the bone level and then our implant connection. I'll go ahead and choose the zirconia monolithic and then our shade. And then I'll select save. My emergence profile is selected this time, so that's awesome, makes me happy. And then I'm going to go ahead and select next. Maybe. Sorry, I have the circle of death going on my computer. I apologize for that. There we go. Now, with this particular workflow, that was the lock method. This is going to be the trim method. So the trim method, when you're using the trim method, we do skip around a little bit. So we are going to imagine that this is our healing abutment, okay? So I'm going to first scan my whole entire arch on the lower with this trim method. So I'm going to go ahead and scan the lower arch, occlusal lingual buccal. And then this method to me as an assistant makes a little bit more sense because, again, like I said, in my state, I couldn't take off the healing abutment. So I'm doing all of my scans before the doctor comes in the room. So with this method, because we had chosen tooth number 19 first, it will ask me to mark the tooth, but I do not want to mark the tooth yet. I'm going to go over to the left-hand side of the screen and deselect marked tooth, okay? And now what I'm going to do is, instead of moving forward, you can see how it won't let me move next yet because, number one, I haven't marked the tooth and I haven't really done anything to it yet. But what I can do is just move forward, not taking my scan body yet, and I'm going to move forward to the upper. It will ask me, hey, you didn't mark the tooth. Are you sure you don't want to do it now? And I'm going to mark it later. Our healing abutment is still in place. We haven't taken that out yet. Now I'm going to scan for the upper. So I'll go ahead and scan my opposing arch, all while the healing abutment is still in place. Occlusal buccal lingual. I won't scan the palate this time. Okay. Now I will go ahead and go to the occlusion page. And I'm going to scan both my occlusions still while the healing abutment is still in place. I'm going to scan the right side first under bite 1. And then I'm going to move to the left-hand side to scan that for bite 2. Now I'm going to go back to my lower scan up at the top of the toolbar. I'm going to go back to my lower scan. And now what I can do is I'm going to trim my healing abutment out. I'm going to trim that out. If I make that circle and I can select all patches, it'll remove everything that's in that circle. And then I can select done. Now I'm going to remove my healing abutment, scan in that emergence profile within 3 to 5 seconds. So we're going to imagine this is my emergence profile. So we scan that in within 3 to 5 seconds because we know that tissue will collapse within that 3 to 5 seconds. So I'll scan it in very quickly. Now I can mark the tooth. So I'll go ahead and mark the tooth. Everybody with me? Everybody good? I can't see anyone, so I'm imagining everybody is giving me a thumbs up.
Yes, thank you.
Cool. Okay, good. So I'm going to mark the tooth. It's going to put that circle on it. So remember, the circle is the emergence profile where we're going to cut. That's going to be cut out when we go to do our scan body. So I'm going to select done at the bottom. Now I'm going to move next and go and put my scan body in place. And that will be the last thing that I do is scan my scan body. Now, sometimes my emergence profile may not cut out as much as I want. So maybe I have a little bit more, like you can see right there, like I have a little bit more tissue that's showing that I want to show. So I can just use my trim tool and just trim that up just a little bit so I can make sure that I gather the information that I need with my scan body in place. So I place my scan body. Now I'm just going to go in and scan in my scan body. And then gather all of that information. Hopefully it gathers more than what it did last time. Sometimes it wants to be finicky. Just my training one, not yours. One day they may give me a real scan body to scan in. All right, so now what I would do is, if my scan looks good, I would take my scan body off, place my healing abutment back in, and then all I have to do is post-process and send the case off. So with the trim method, you do skip around a little bit, but in my clinical brain, it makes more sense to do all of my scans with the healing abutment in first before the doctor comes in the room. And then even if the assistant can take the healing abutment off, the last thing is going to be trimming out that emergence profile, scanning in the emergence profile, putting on my scan body, and then taking my scan body scan. And then the last thing I need to do is just put my healing abutment back on, and then I'm done with the process. Does that make sense with everyone? Anyone have questions about that? I know it makes you skip around a little bit, but again, it depends on what your office needs at that time. And if you have questions, you can put that in the Q&A. Did you guys have any questions about it? Did it make sense when I was explaining it to you guys?
Yeah, no, I think that was great, Brandy. One thing I would
Good.
just say is, as Brandy's going through these different workflows, what's important for us at the lab, she's showing you a full arch here. I know she made mention that whether you're scanning a full arch or a quadrant, at the lab, we would prefer that you send a full arch, just more information, the better. And then when she showed you the area where you could attach photos, one thing that we're seeing offices do is actually attaching the photo of the x-ray. To confirm that the scan body's seated. So again, just more information to the lab, the better. So no, I think those two workflows are great. And to your point, it just depends on what works best for the practice and, for the scanning workflow, passing the scanner from operatory to operatory.
Yeah, for sure. And I'll show you again where to attach those images. I don't have an actual x-ray to attach, but I'll show you where I can attach a scan or a picture from the actual computer. And honestly, in our workflow, when I'm a trainer, I typically train for a full arch scan no matter what, because in our software, you can always make a copy of a case. And if a patient has multiple restorations that needs to be done, I can utilize a full arch scan multiple times just by, trimming out what we've done before. So I like to train for full arch scans. I have tons of offices that ask if we can do a quadrant scan, which is why I mention it. But obviously, again, I'm also the type that I like to send more information to the lab. So again, what Tori said, it's so much better to send more information, the full arch scan, so you can, not only mimic the tooth on the opposite side, but also give that bite. Maybe their bite's different on the left side versus the right side, and you want to make sure that the lab sees all of that. So I encourage you to always take full arch scans, just because it may make your life easier in a month or so, but also it will make your life easier now for this restoration to send to the lab. I'm going to go ahead and select next in the upper left-hand corner. And we've already post-processed the case, so now I can see all of those, but I do want to show you where you can actually attach an image like an x-ray to this case. So if I select attach images, so all of these 4 things we can do on the front end in our case details also, but you can also do it before you send the case off. So maybe someone set the case up before, and then you get into your scanning process, and then you realize that maybe you want to add more case instructions, or you wanted to attach any images. You don't have to go all the way back to the beginning of the case setup. You can do it here just before you send the case off. So if I wanted to attach any of those images, I know I mentioned earlier that this is a patient library, but if I wanted to import from my computer, in the upper right-hand corner where it says import, I can actually pull from my computer, whether it's my desktop or whatever, the same way that you would do like any other software. I'm just going to pull in this picture that I have of Peter Parker, and then it will attach to this particular one. So I will just highlight it and import into here. And then now it's into my my library. So now when I select through all of these scans that I've taken, now my cute little picture of Peter Parker is going to be there as well, or your x-ray, whatever it may be. If you wanted to send a picture of Peter Parker, you can absolutely do so. I'm sure your lab would love it. So that's where you would attach your x-ray from there. And then lastly, all we would do is just select send to the lab. And then once that gets sent to the lab, I do want to show you one other thing that will kind of help with the status of it. And then we can open it up for some Q&A. So now if I go back to my home screen and I select my screw retain crown, when I don't have to open the case, but you can see the progress here. You can see that the order was definitely sent. So if you have someone that checks behind you at the end of the day on your scanner before you shut it down, you can actually like open the cases of the day and just not really open them, but just select them. And then you'll be able to see the status bar that was actually sent, so no cases get left behind. And then obviously throughout the process, you'll be able to see when it's been received, accepted, and then shipped back to you. And then that is those two workflows. Did that spark any questions from anyone? Does it seem pretty simple, pretty easy? I think it's pretty simple. I honestly think it's a little bit simpler than Crown and Bridge, to be honest. So any questions about any of that? Anything that I can help clarify?
I don't see any additional questions.
Okay.
Which is great. We had a couple good questions throughout.
Yeah, we did.
Certainly if there's anything last minute, please let us know.
Yeah. And obvious, and if you guys need to reach out to me, Alyssa can send that to you if need be, and you can reach out to me and ask me any questions that you have that once you get into the workflow. Sometimes it doesn't spark any questions until you're actually in it.
We did have a question. Could we
Okay.
get the recording? So I will send out the link to the recording for everyone after. And then we do typically post these on our website. We have a whole on-demand learning section, which I encourage you to check out, which has all of our past webinars as well. But everyone attending today will be getting an email from me just with some follow-up and the link to the recording as well.
Yay.
I'm just going to share my screen real quick. Yep, another. Tori, do you want to handle this question, and then I'll share my screen here.
Am I unmuted? I can take this too, Tori.
Okay, sorry, I was trying to get off mute. Yeah, go ahead, Emily.
Would you advise using Trios for creating a fixed all-on-4 full upper denture?
Yeah.
Brandy, you can take
Sure.
that, but I
Yeah.
cannot do it because I know we've done this before too.
So I hope one day that 3Shape is going to give us a workflow for All on X. Currently, we do not have a certified workflow for All on X. I know there are ways that you can find them. I can't tell you that. Maybe they can tell you that. But I know they're working on a workflow for us to be able to tell you. I just don't, it's not approved for me to be able to tell you right now. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
That's not what you want to hear.
Label indication, as we say.
Yeah.
I will just add, I know some of our surgical advocates, they do love Trios for scanning for these types of cases.
Yeah.
And there are certainly workflows for that. And I know that that's a frequently asked question for those all on X cases. So we can definitely, please, if we can drop our Tori and my emails as well for follow-up, just to spend some more one-on-one with that workflow.
And there are locations that you can find them. I just can't say them on a recorded thing.
Great question.
Yeah, it's a great question. We get it often. Unfortunately, we're getting there. We're getting there. I promise. Hopefully, first quarter. I can actually talk about it in the first quarter. Maybe I can actually talk about it in the first quarter.
Very nice. Sounds like we'll have to have you back.
I know.
I did just want to share, feel free if you have additional questions that come up, feel free to type them in, but I did just want to share, thank you everyone for attending. There's a QR code on here. If you could please just take a moment. We love your feedback. Brandy loves your feedback. Any additional resources that we can provide, suggestions of, different webinars that we can host. So if you could scan that QR, that's very valuable to us, and that'll let us know how we did. And then my contact information is here. And I did just want to give a plug. I will send to everyone who attended today a copy of this flyer as well, but we are fortunate enough to have Brandy back in December. So, and she actually just volunteered for a session too. So we'll keep you posted on that prior to this call. She is going to be doing another webinar focusing on mastering edentulous scans for digital dentures. So that's something, we're all seeing a lot of. So we're excited to see what that one looks like. And she's going to break it out into 2 different sessions, focusing on the different applications, just to make sure we have enough time for everything. So that will be listed on our website. I'll be sharing the flyer with everyone. And I think if there aren't any further questions, I think we all get 5 minutes back on our lunch hour, which is nice.
Nice. That is nice. I really appreciate all y'all spending time with me. I really appreciate everyone. This has been so much fun, and I love partnering with you guys.
Yes, thank you, Brandy. It's been
Yeah.
fantastic.
Thank you.
We'll see you in a couple weeks.
Okay.
All right.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye,
Thank
y'all.
you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.